Hello, it's Maureen Legas here with your 21 Days 2018 series, and today is day 11. All right, so today we're going to spend some time talking about .loop. We will probably spend a couple of days on a couple of the features of .loop. If you're a Keller Williams agent, you access .loop by clicking on My Transactions. If you use .loop at another brokerage, you might have the similar kind of access, or you can go to .loop.com to log in. If you are working with an agent that has access to .loop, then this will help you understand how to use that. So I'm going to click on My Transactions, and that's going to take me into the .loop system. So when we come into .loop, we have some options up here. When you roll over your picture, you can work on your account and change your account settings. There are templates to set up. There's people, there are tasks. This is going back to your loops after you've moved to some other area. And then there's some reporting information. So let's start by creating a loop. So down here, I'm going to click on Create Loop. So depending on the requirements for your office, in our office, we require the address be used for the name of the loop. And for testing purposes, I always recommend that when you create a loop, and you want to play with it, test it, that you use your name as the address so the people in the compliance department who are checking to make sure your loop is proper, they understand that it's a test loop. If you use 123 Main Street, that actually could be an address in some places. So I'm going to pick a property here for Maureen. It's going to start to look for property with a similar name, Maureen Legas Street. And if it were me, I would add the client name at the end, so that way the compliance officer has the address and they know the address of the property, and then I have the name so that I can find it based on the name. Now, some offices have templates set up that will automatically put tasks in and documents into your loop based on the type of loop that is. For this example, I'm just going to create the loop without a template. Now, it's important in .loop to follow certain steps so that the documents you're adding will populate properly. So the first thing you want to do is set your transaction type. And so let's say this is going to be a listing for sale. And then I set the loop status, and it's going to be pre-listing. And then I want to make sure to update the details. So I'm going to click on Details. And now I'm going to start to populate the information that I want to automatically feed the documents when I load them. Now, since I added my name here and added the street name followed by my name, and I didn't select one of the drop-down properties that it came up with, it's going to say that's a custom name, and it's not going to know the address. So you can search by address or MLS number to try to populate it, or you can add this. So I'm going to put the address back in. There, Maureen Legas Street. And it's going to be in Bradenton, Florida. I'm going to select Florida. And the zip code is 34202. And the county happens to be Manatee County. And I don't have an MLS number because I'm just starting to put the listing information in to get the details populated. And let's say the parcel 12345678990. It's my parcel ID. So this is a listing. When I come down here, the financials want purchase price. So this is if I were adding a new loop for a purchase contract, and I'm not, so I'm going to skip this part. Then the contract dates, again, I don't have purchase date, so I'm going to skip it. Offer dates, I'm going to skip it. Contract information, I'm going to come down here. If it is a referral, you can add that information here. And then here's the listing information. So what's the expiration date? So I click this and I find an expiration date. Expiration date, let's say, I'm trying to get the calendar not to be blocked here. And I click it till I find, let's say, an expiration date in 6 months, the end of June. And then the listing date, let's say the listing date is going to be the 25th. And then the original price, let's say it's $200,000. And then I'm going to go down. I could put any of this information in there, but most of it does not populate to the listing documents. Homeowners Association dues, let's say they're $200 a month. And then property includes refrigerator, washer, dryer, you know, whatever you want to put. Anything that excludes and any remarks. Well, some of this doesn't populate to the contract anyway. So then the legal description. I might want to put a legal description of legal description test lot 6 block 4, you know, whatever you want. You put your legal description that you get from your document, from your property, and you pull that from the county records. You can put the subdivision name, the lot number, and here I said it's lot 6, and the deed, and the page, and the section, and here it's actually section, township, range. All three can go in there under section, and that'll get populated in your section, township, range. All right, this stuff, the property information, that doesn't go in the listing contracts at all, so I don't bother with that. Once I have this, I'm going to click Save. Now, some of this in your area, you might have different listing contracts, and this information might populate, so fill in what is customary for your listing documents. Then I'm going to hit Save, and I'm going to save this information. It's going to tell me the save was successful. Now I'm going to go back up. I'm going to go back to my loop. So the first step, creating the loop, putting the property address, the street name, and if you're going to do a test, use your own name so the office knows it's a test. Set this information here, view the details, and update them. Now, the loop here has different sections. We have a section for documents, we have a section for people, and we have a section for tasks. So we do not want to add the documents yet because we haven't added the people. So everything that you want to populate automatically to the documents once you open them, you want to add first. So we added all the details, they will populate, and now we want to add the people. So you're in there and your compliance officer is in there. Now you want to add, in this case it's a listing, you want to add the sellers. So I'm going to click on Add Person. So I add the seller, Sandra Seller, and the email for the seller, sandrasellaflorida@gmail.com. The role is seller. I do not want to add Sandra Seller to my team. The team is for your team members that have access to everything that you have in this loop. If you have listing documents, if you have offer documents, all of that would be available to anybody on your team. So this is truly for just a team member. You can add the information here about the seller if you'd like, or just leave it with the email address, which we need for signing documents. The other thing you can do here is click if you want to send an introductory email to the seller introducing them to .loop. Once I have the seller, I'm going to click Add Person, and you'll see Sandra Seller is here as one of the people. Now I'm going to add another seller. So now I add Sam Seller, Gmail, I add an email, and I make sure that Sam Seller is also a seller, and I click to add the person. Again, I can send an introductory email to the seller. Each of the people that will be signing any of your contract documents have to have a unique email address. Email address and their password is what will authorize the signature as electronic signatures, which is what .loop uses. So now I want to add that seller. And then you'll see I have two sellers. And now it's time. I've got the details set up to populate. I've got the sellers in there to populate. Now I can start adding the documents. And so every document that has to do with listings will belong in the listing folder. This is a listing that we added. Once we get an offer, we have to create another folder, which is the offer folder. So I'm going to modify this. I'm going to rename it and call this Listing Documents folder. Then I'm going to add another folder, which is going to be called Offer folder. And that way I'm waiting for the offer to come in, and that folder would be ready. I'm going to move the Listing Documents folder up to the top. This is going to wait. I'm also going to add another folder, which is called Other Documents folder. And the other documents folder is for anything that the office does not need to see. I'm going to drag that down to the bottom. So in other words, if your office doesn't need the survey, but you have the survey to deliver to the buyer, you can add that in other documents folder. Everything that's in the listing or the offer folder will have to submit to the office for review, and your compliance officer will have to go through and make sure it's proper. We don't want to send stuff to the office that the compliance officer doesn't want to see. So make sure you understand what your requirements are in your office so that you're keeping the documents separate. The other thing is you want to make sure the listing documents are in one folder, offer is in another. If you get multiple offers, you might have offer 1 folder, add, offer 2 folder, add, offer 3 folder, and you have those documents separated so that way you can keep track of it. And if you add anyone into those folders, for example, the buyer's agent who presented the offer, they don't have access to all of the offers, just the one that's in their folder. So you want to make sure to keep that separate. So now we're going to click to add documents. And we do that, we can get them from 3 places. We can get them from templates that are set up by your office. We can browse and find them on our computer, or we can get them from email. So email, there will be a unique email for each folder, and there's also a unique email for you as a member of .loop. This one here is for the folder, the listing documents folder. Down here, there's a unique email for the offer folder. So if you want to email something directly to the offer folder, you can use this email. Same thing with the listing documents folder. You can use this email. Don't share this email address with other agents because anything they email will end up coming into the folder, and you don't want that. You want to keep the folder with just the documents that are necessary for that office. So let's look at the templates, and that's where we're going to find most of the documents. So here I have different templates that your office may have created. They might have a folder full of condominium listing documents, residential purchase, residential listing, and you're going to click on, and because this is a listing, you're going to click on the folder that has the documents that are set up for your office that are required for that type of contract doc. Here on the bottom, this is where Florida Interactive Forms, that's all of the Florida forms. But right now I'm going to go to the residential listing. And then I'm going to go through and pick the forms that I need for this listing. And so as I go through, I know what kind of listing, I know what age the listing is, I know where it's located, and I'll come through and pick what I think are the documents that I need. So I'm picking a CDD, Community Development District, because it's in 34202, so we have that. I'm going to pre-populate, I'm going to let the seller pre-populate some of the offer forms. So this would be an optional form for a buyer showing defective drywall or lack of it. And I always use this so that way the seller will let us know whether they have any knowledge of any defective drywall in the house. Then there's the exclusive right of sale listing agreement. And when I roll over these, there are different types. In our area, this particular agreement is for a transaction broker. In Florida, we are presumed to be transaction brokers. When I roll over this one, this is for an agent that decides to be a single agent and wants to be able to transition to a transaction broker if they get both sides. So I'm going to click that one. That's what I'm going to use. So I keep going through and I'm looking for what documents are required for this particular loop. There's a homeowners association. I'm going to have that. There's not a housing for older persons. Where did I? Housing for older persons? No. Interest-bearing kickout clause, standard disclosure. So KW has some standard disclosures. This is the one for sellers. And so I'm going to select that. And I'm also going to take in the mold disclosure and the property disclosure for the seller to fill out. And that's it. That's all I'm going to take from this group here. And I'm going to click copy, and it's going to import those into my listing documents folder. Offer folder and other documents folder is still there. Now I can decide to sort this in any order I want. And when I roll my mouse over, it gives the symbol that shows movement. So I can drag the exclusive right agreement to the top. Then I can make sure all the addenda that I need signed are at the top. Then all the disclosures are at the bottom. And once I do this, I go through and I add all of the pieces of information that I need for each of these documents. Once I have everything added that I need for the now when I click on this, for example, exclusive right, the things that I already set up ahead of time in the people and in the details will show up. There's Sandra Seller was the first one I added. Sam Seller was the second seller I added. Here's the information that I added into the details section, and it's all there. So now I'm going to autofill, and everything's going to populate. This week we're also going to talk about how to pre-populate some of these forms. So then I start now typing some of the information that I need. Now I use a clause manager, so when I start typing the K, the information comes up that starts with a K that I have put in the clauses that I frequently use. So I go through and I check. Personal property included, remember we put washer, dryer, and refrigerator doesn't populate here. So some of those fields in the details you don't need to put in. So now go through, you fill out your contracts, then you save it. Oh, when I want to show you too, this is Sandra Seller and Sam Seller. It knows when I click on this, it'll tell me it's assigned to Sam Seller. When I click on this one, it tells me it's assigned to Sandra. And when they log in, and when we send these to them to sign, they're going to be given the information. They're going to be drawn to the fields that are assigned to them. Okay, so now I've saved that. I go back. I have all my documents. I've updated all my documents, and now I want to share them with the client. Well, these documents, the mold addendum and the property disclosure, the client has to fill out. So they're going to come in here and fill out all of the parts of the document. So that gets sent differently. So generally what I do when I'm building the contract documents is I'll come in and I'll make sure that I have all the fields proper in each of these disclosures, autofill them, the fields that I can place in there. And then what I'm going to do, save it, and I'm going to send these to one of the sellers. So I have two sellers. I have Sandra and Sam, and I know Sandra is the one who fills out all the disclosures. So I'm going to click the two disclosures, and then I'm going to share these with Sandra. She's the one who's going to fill it out. I'm going to take Sam off, just Sandra. And the options to send it, I can send it to sign, or I can send it to fill in and sign. Edit in private is when you're sharing with an agent. So I can say fill in and sign. I click that. And then I send a message, Sandra, please fill in this form. Please fill in the disclosures before signing. I am working on the listing documents and will get those to you as soon as I can. And you can send this to Sandra, fill in and sign. Once Sandra has filled that in and signed it, then you can send it to Sam as sign only. Now you don't want to do it together like this, because if Sam signs first and then Sandra comes and tries to fill them in, it'll take Sam's signatures off. So you just send it to the one person who's going to fill it in, and then once that's done, you send it to the other person to do sign only, and then you click share. While they're working on that, you work on the rest of the documents, and when they're done, you send all the other documents to them as sign only, and they can both sign. The documents actually aren't sent. The link to the documents that are in the cloud is sent, and they can both sign at the same time. All right, so that's kind of how we get the documents in there, how we order the documents, how we set privileges to them when we're sending them, and how we set up a basic .loop system. We're going to spend a couple of days talking about other features to make sure you're using .loop to the fullest potential. All right, have a great day.